Hello everyone and welcome back to World Warplanes, and this time I have something maybe a little bit different. This is the ME-209A. It is the German Tier 8 light fighter. It's from the 109 line, so if you guys know those light fighters, you can see it in the design, right? It very much resembles a 109. Looks like it has a slightly different engine. It's a little bit slicker. Um, but for all intents and purposes, it's a 109. It's just an advanced 109. So let's take a look at the history, then we'll go over the stats, then I'll give you some gameplay. So, if we take a look at the ME-209A, it was originally designed to reach a higher top speed record, so designed for getting a speed record, okay, and later improved on to become a full-featured fighter to replace the BF-109. Never entered mass production. So it sounds like it took the 109 airframe and was designed to create or get as high of a top speed as possible with the airframe. And, get a better engine on it, try to change the aerodynamics of it slightly, and try to force it to break a speed record. It's kind of cool, and it was going to be used for military service. So cool. And I'm curious how it would have compared to the or BF 109G, because if you guys know anything about that plane, it killed more German ace pilots or German aces than it did the enemies. Like the 109 crashed more times and had more failures when taking off and landing and even in the air. Um, so it killed more aces than the enemies actually killed. So, and I don't know if that's statistically true, but I do know it killed quite a few German aces during takeoff and landing. I'm curious whether or not this plane would have been more of a stable aircraft or if it perhaps would have caused just as many issues. I guess that's something we will never truly know, and I just haven't done research on it. So there's that, right? But it was designed for speed. I guess that's the main thing you should know. And of course, you have the Allied bombings going on near the end of the war, so I'm sure this was designed for high altitude intercepting as well. So if we take a look at what Wargaming has to say about the plane, and let me open up all these before I forget, we can immediately notice that it's got autocannon armament effective at medium range. Alright, so let's take a look at the armament. We have 130, which you should be very familiar with if you've played the TA-152, as this 30 is identical to the ones on the TA-152. The difference being that the TA-152 gets 3 of those 30 mils, and the 209A only gets 1. So it is something to keep in mind. But instead of the extra 30s, you get 2 20s. And these 20s are the same ones you're going to have on the FW-190D. And it says you get them on the TA-152. They must be the stock guns. Yeah, okay, so the stock guns for the TA-152 are the same guns that you get on the 209A. So I guess if you wanted to see how the guns felt, you could put this 30 on and put these 220s on your TA-152, and you've essentially got the same armament as the 209A. I did not know that, so hey, we learned something. But yeah, this 30 is really good. It fires very slow. It fires a single round per second, or 60 rounds per minute. So it's got a very slow rate of fire, but when it does hit, it does a lot of damage. So each hit says 140 damage. That sounds about right. So each of these 30 mil hits will do about 140 damage, especially if you hit it in vulnerable parts of the plane. You'll definitely be doing that. If we take a look, we get the firing range of 3,115 feet. So that is where this effective range comes in. The 30 mil is the one with the longer range, and the 3,115 feet is really good on this plane. It is one of the specialities of the gun, and you can make that work pretty well. You can kill planes at very long distances. But your 20s only have a range of 2,559 feet, which is less than the 30, but is actually really good for 20s. So your effective firing range on your guns is quite exceptional with the caliber guns that you have. But yes, they only have max firing range of about 2,600, or sorry, 2,560 feet. But at the same time, that is pretty decent, and really anything above 2,000 feet with 20s is really quite good. But it's just something to keep in mind, and you typically won't hit planes at that distance, but it can go up to that far, and allows hitting planes at 2,200 feet, or even 2,000, exactly 2,000 feet. You can really make quite good work of them when your 30 and your 20s are hitting. The only reason I'm kind of mentioning this a lot is let's quick take a look at the rate of fire. You have 400 rounds per minute with these 20s, and you only have 60 rounds per minute with your 30. And that means that in order for these 20s to do what they're supposed to be doing, you need to continuously hold down the trigger. You're not one-shot wonders. Whereas this one, if you're just holding down the trigger, your gun's going to overheat super fast, and you're going to miss most of your shots. So it creates this kind of weird situation with this plane, where you can either try aiming with your 30 and hitting with that big gun, or you can try just holding down the trigger and getting your 20s to hit, with no care in the world about what the 30 is doing. But this is where it's weird, because they don't synergize well. These guns don't work together in a very effective fashion. They're quite different. And it's just this issue with them that creates quite an awkward atmosphere, I would say. At close range, holding down the trigger is fine. You'll do just fine. And you can kind of, as long as you're trying to hit with your 20s and not really caring about your 30, you'll kill things pretty quickly. But as soon as you want to try to actually hit with your 30, you have to start ignoring your 20s. And I guess you could consider that a skill-based plane where you're choosing which gun to fire with. But for me personally, I think that's kind of pathetic. I've been told there's a way that you can assign different keys to each of these guns. So you have your 20s may be mapped to your left click mouse button, and your 30 might be on one of the side mouse buttons or something. And that way you can still aim with your 30 but get full use of these 20s. For me, that's a lot of extra work, and I really just focus on trying to get the 30 to hit most of the time, unless the target's on low health and I just use this. Or if it's out of range of these guns, then I'll use this gun to try to hit them and finish them off. But it's kind of that awkward synergy, but they're not synergy. It's not good synergy between the guns. But it's this awkward relationship between the 30 and the 20s on this plane that makes it very bizarre, in my opinion. If you have the 109G, it's very similar to that. But I will say that the guns on this plane do feel better than the 109G. I still don't think these guns work well together, though. On their own, they're both great guns, and they do very well on their own. I feel like these 20s are very similar at least, to the ones you get on the Batwing. So, the Batwing, you only get 20s, and so getting those 20s to hit is actually quite easy. You're focusing on getting your 20s to hit. Whereas this plane, in the TA-152, you have those big 30s, and so you're focusing on trying to hit with big guns. But this 209A, you have both guns, and it feels really weird. But when you are hitting with them, you it does feel pretty decent. It's just it takes a while to get used to. I know I spent a lot of time on that, but the guns are probably the most bizarre feature of this plane. And if I were to change anything about it, I would either add an extra 20 and get rid of this 30, or I'd get rid of these 20s and add two more 30s. I don't like having both. It doesn't feel super great. On to the next point, though. Low survivability and vulnerable engine. That's kind of what you expect on a light fighter. They always put that on there, so just take that with a grain of salt, I guess. High airspeed and accelerates quickly when boosting. And as you know, the history of the plane, it was designed for speed. So of course the engine had better be good, and it is. It does have a lot of good speed. So yeah, it's pretty decent. And then if we take a look, good maneuverability in horizontal turns. You have 10 seconds to turn 360 degrees. Certainly not bad, not tragic, but certainly not great either. When you're on a light fighter, you do expect something a little bit better. Normally this is the time to turn that you would get in a multi-rule. So against other light fighters, you'll typically struggle, but against multi-rules, you'll fit right in. So especially if you focus this plane on maneuverability, it's not too bad. You can make it work pretty well. So yeah, not tragic maneuverability, not great maneuverability. The airspeed is good though. As you can see, 472 miles per hour at best altitude, very good. 560 max dive speed, also very good. And optimum airspeed at 310, also pretty decent. Rate of climb, almost 500. That's exceptional on a Tier 8 plane, especially a propeller-driven plane and not a jet plane. So, with that all being said, we got one more point. It's very effective at intercepting aircraft at high altitude. So there you go. Like I had mentioned, yes, this is a high altitude fighter. And it does its best at high altitude. With an altitude rating of 82, that's very exceptional. And optimum altitude of 8,202 feet, that is fantastic. So getting to high altitude is really easy. And killing planes at high altitude is easy. But killing bombers feels a little bit awkward to me. And the reason that for this is the 30 overheats super fast, and the 20s overheat relatively quickly. But then when both guns are overheated, they take a while to cool down. So you're basically firing your guns, letting them overheat, letting them cool, firing your guns, letting them cool, firing your guns, letting them cool. And it's this process that actually takes quite a while to kill bombers, in my opinion. It takes about 4 cycles to go through bombers. Bomber flights, maybe a little bit less, but you have to cycle it, and it takes a lot of time just because the guns overheat too fast and they cool down too slowly. And it's this relationship, I would say, that doesn't make it exceptional at killing bombers, but it's pretty decent. And so the high altitude performance, really the only thing you're going to be killing effectively at that altitude would be other heavy fighters, or maybe another Mustang. But for all intents and purposes, there's not really a lot of good targets at high altitude, in my opinion, for this plane. You might catch a couple fighters or multi-rules that are stalling out trying to climb up to you, but all in all, it's not really all that great. And so you have this altitude performance, but you can't really make good use of it because you don't have the firepower, the grit to do what needs to be done. Against high health targets, it just takes a while. Against low health targets, well, there's not really a whole lot that go up to that high. If you stay kind of mid-altitude, even though you do have that high altitude, I feel like that mid-altitude is kind of the golden point for this plane, where you're still finding targets to shoot at, and they're not performing super great compared to you, but at the same time, you're not shooting bombers and high health targets and taking forever. So it's a little bit awkward, but if you play it like that, this plane really does take a lot of getting used to. If you're used to the 109B and 109E, this plane is absolutely not like this. This plane is much more similar to the 109F, 109G. That's that kind of play style where you have one large gun and two smaller caliber guns. And on their own, the guns are great, but together they don't work very well, in my opinion. But I think that's enough talking. Let's jump to the service department real quick. And it's going to be a pretty standard setup. We don't have fire extinguishers, and I also don't have universal because I am actually trying to save a lot of money. I have a whole bunch of planes that I need to buy, including 3 tier 9s and 2 tier 6s and 4 tier 8s. 4 or 5 tier 8s. So, and I think one more tier 7 I have left to do as well. So I need a lot of credits, and right now I don't have the amount of credits that I need. So Universal is not an option for me. But if you do have the money for it, you know, you're running a premium account, you have 150 million credits, as someone told me that they had, which is just ridiculous. Then yeah, you can definitely afford universal ammo. But for me, normal scrub, I do not have the finances for it. Now, if we take a look at the upgrade path, if you do have the TA-152, you're already going to have this gun unlocked, which is nice. These guns, however, also you'll have these guns unlocked as well. So if you have the TA-152, you're going to be able to immediately mount the 30, and then all you have to do is research the airframe, and then you can mount the airframe and the guns, and then you can just go for the engine first. So that's the path I would take. Research the airframe, research the engine, because that'll allow you to mount your 20s and stuff. However, if you do not have the TA-152, I feel like the research path you should take is the 209 V6, then get these 20s, then when the 20s are researched, now it's up to you. I think the 20s are really good, are a huge step up from the 13s, and they should work pretty well together with these 20s. So once you have these 20s and you have this 20 on there, test it, feel how it is. I guess if you have the TA-152, you have this 30 is researched as well. But if you don't have anything, airframe, guns, and you'll still have this 20 as well. If you can make the 320s work pretty well, I don't think it's worth going for the 30 right away. Instead, I would go for the engines and then the 30 last. I do think the 30 is nice. Very specific situations it works well. But if you just want to have less issues with synergy between the guns, just keep the 20 and you might actually do pretty well. If we compare this 20 to the upgraded 20s, I'm pretty sure they're the same ones, right? No, they're not. So, yeah, the stock 20s are weaker. No, wait. Wait a minute. This doesn't make any sense. The H is this gun. The S are these guns. So these guns are technically worse than your stock 20. So, here's a point to mention. If you want, keep the 20 on this and you might actually have a pretty good time with it. I've never tested it myself, but if you can make it work, I see no reason to get the 30. If you want to play those 30s and you want to have that good experience with the 30s, get the TA-152 and have the 30s exclusively. I really don't think the synergy between these guns work very well, but the synergy between this 20 and these 20s might actually be pretty decent. So keep that in mind. If you don't have the 30 research, you don't have the TA-152 researched, I would go for airframe, guns, engine. And maybe just completely skip out on the 30. It might actually be better for you. And you know, maybe if you do have the TA-152 and you do try the 20s and the 30 and it's not working very well for you, try mounting the 20 and give that a shot. I haven't tested it myself, but it might actually make it more fun. So, that was kind of drawn out, but yeah. Now the equipment modules, highly recommend gyroscopic gun sight, as the firing accuracy is super useful. After that, this was a free module, so that's why it's on there. I would replace this one actually with control surface adjustment, and same with this one. This was a free one as well, so I would go lightweight airframe. Giving that little bit extra boost to maneuverability is super helpful. In my opinion, it works really well. So that's the setup I would do. Gyroscopic gun sight, control surface adjustment 3, and lightweight airframe 3 for increased maneuverability. However, as you guys saw, this plane does have pretty decent airspeed for the tier. So if you think that airspeed is more important to you, then perhaps engine tuning 3 and aircraft polish 2 might be better for your playstyle. If you want to try to use it more as a high altitude boom and zoom plane, you can make that work pretty well with that setup. But for me personally, I like the increased maneuverability and the increased accuracy. But in both setups, I would definitely recommend gyroscopic gun sight. That's a requirement. Paint shop, you do actually get a pretty sharp free paint scheme, so you guys can look at it. It's been showing it off the whole time so far. I do like this paint scheme. It looks really nice, and the plane itself looks really nice as well. It looks like a solid upgrade from the 109G. So that's just something to keep in mind. I really do like the way this plane looks. It's very sharp, and it does. Like I said, it does play like the 109F and 109G, but compared to those two planes, it does have the same playstyle. But this plane feels better at that playstyle, but it's not a playstyle that I enjoy. But the 20s, maybe it actually would have been pretty decent. I didn't realize that the stock 20 was actually better than the upgraded 20s. I don't get that. That makes no sense to me. But that's just something to keep in mind. Then you can also mount your beta sticker, so yay, my beta sticker is on there. As for crew, my crew is in the tier 9, I believe, which the tier 9 goes back to the 109E and 109B playstyle, and I love it. But that's not what we're here to talk about right now. The pilot is what I'm looking for. I went with Marksman 1, Marksman 2, and then I went with Aerodynamics Expert. But as you realize, I didn't actually have those equipment modules on my tier 8 on the 209A, so this one would actually not be very useful to me. I'd have to make sure I put the control surface adjustment trim and the other maneuverability increasing equipment in order to get true power with this. But even if you have go for the speed one, this one actually helps with that as well. Because it increases your aircraft polish and your engine tuning as well. So this one could be very useful depending on which setup you went with. Just something to keep in mind. And then alternatively, you could do Aerobatics Expert. Once I get 2 more points, that's probably what I'm going to do. But you know, like I said earlier, if engine speed really is very, very, very important to you, then I would go, instead of Marksman 1 and Marksman 2, perhaps going with Cruise Flight, Engine Guru 1, Engine Guru 2, and Aerodynamics Expert might be a better setup for you. That's not the setup I enjoy, but if you want to try to build your 209 for speed, high altitude, boom and zoom, then you would do Engine Guru 1 and 2, Aerodynamics Expert, and Cruise Flight. Personally, I would get Cruise Flight before Engine Guru 1, simply because it is more powerful as long as you're not shooting and not getting fired at. So like going from sector to sector is better. But if you want like an always boost, then go with Engine Guru 1 and 2. But yeah, those 4 skills definitely great if you want boom and zoom. Otherwise, Marksman 1, Marksman 2, Aerodynamics Expert, Aerobatics Expert, and you're set. Okay, that was kind of long, but this plane is very unique in my opinion. It has a very different play style, and if you are currently at the 109F or the 109G, the tips that I gave for this plane should apply pretty decently to those planes as well. But with that being said, let's jump to some gameplay. Now the gameplay before I go is actually very, very, very old. If you guys remember when I first started doing these videos, my computer had a meltdown and I had to wipe the hard drive. However, the hard drive that I had to wipe, I thought contained the replays that I had, but I actually had my replays stored in a different folder, which I just recently found a couple days ago. So, the replay you're going to see is very old. I'm really glad I salvaged it though, because it was a really good battle with this plane. And although I say it's not a great plane, and I don't like this plane per se, this plane always performed. I don't know what that is. I can't explain it to you. But this plane always performed so well. I had several 20k games in this plane, and even when I got the 20k games, I still hated the plane, and I cannot for the life of me explain why this plane works, but I don't like it. It's like, it is the most confusing thing ever. It works really well, and yet I hate it so much at the same time. But anyway, let's go to the gameplay section real quick. Alright guys, and welcome back to the gameplay section. So, as you are very well aware of, this battle is super old. In fact, this battle took place during the Albion event. The German line was the first line I went down. All 5 of those German lines was the first lines that went down. So I only have 4 tier 8s at this point of this battle. And now I have the Japanese tier 8s, the British tier 8s, so, and almost at the tier 9s for those as well. So this is a super old battle, but it still demonstrates what the plane can do. And as you can see, holding down the trigger is what you kind of have to do in certain situations, but you just have to realize that if you're missing with the 30, you are really having a hard time. I'm holding down the trigger here because I feel like my guns are going to cool down by the time I flip around, and I wanted to just try to get as much damage out as I could. I did, and so I flipped around and I just held down the trigger because I felt like most of my guns were going to be able to hit. Coming over here, just holding on the trigger, got my 30 to hit once, and so he died. So yeah, pretty decent. And as you can see, I'm keeping it kind of high. I'm not keeping it super high, but I'm not putting it down on the deck either. If I want planes to come at me, I want them to have to go up and lose some energy, because I can really deal with them pretty effectively, get my guns to hit a little bit easier if they've lost some of their energy. So, this is actually, let's see, what do we have? We got a couple planes right below us. I'm going to choose the one that's closest. He's coming up at me slightly, so I got 30 to hit him once, but not having 3 30s does kind of hurt this plane a little bit, in my opinion. Because when you do hit with the 30, it's always nice, but it's not as nice as when you get 3 30s to hit, if you know what I'm saying. But finishing off low health targets is much more... it's a lot easier in this plane because you have 20s, which fire much faster than the 30s, whereas a TA-152, if you leave a plane on like 2 hit points, there's a possibility that you're just going to be sitting on his tail forever and never killing him. So, yeah, it's something to keep in mind. They have differences, and you'll notice it. This plane works really well sometimes, and other times... well, it still works well, but I don't understand why, because it doesn't feel great to me. It's so confusing. I don't understand this plane. It messes with my brain on so many different levels. But here we see a J8M. Never going to kill him, but I want to see if I can get a couple shots on him before he runs away. Oh, wait, he's turn fighting. Okay, yeah, J8M, you should really not turn fight in that plane. So he's gone. Super easy kill. He lost all of his speed and started turn fighting. Worst decision of his life. So he died. LA7, and there we go. We take him out, but as you can see, the guns overheat fairly quickly. The 30 overheats really fast. The 20s overheat fairly quickly. They're not terribly. They don't have a terrible reload, but there I stopped even firing with my 20s. I just wanted to get my 30 to hit, because I knew if I get just one hit with that 30, he'd be dead. So going head on with an A7M. It looks like a 30 hit, because he has lost most of his health. Oh, there he goes, he's dead. So I don't know. I really don't understand this plane. I just don't. It's fun, and yet I don't like it, and it performs, yet it doesn't feel great. I don't know. I really can't tell you, because I can't not suggest this plane, but I can't suggest the plane at the same time. It's just a weird plane. Yeah, I don't know. I will say this. I'd much rather fly this plane than the KI-94-2. That's saying something. But I feel like this plane performs better than the KI-94-2. So if that has anything to go off of, then fine, but I don't know. I thought that plane, the KI-94-2, was a huge letdown from the KI-84. But yeah, it's not a terrible plane, and you can definitely make it work. But it's so weird. I just don't know. I just don't know. Alright, so here we go. If we get close to the target and they kind of like start being stupid, then killing them is really easy in this plane. When they're going slow, and the DPS that you can get on the plane is crazy. But your gun overheats so quickly, so if you're missing, it really does hinder a lot. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't get it. So we have the A7M again. I shouldn't really be turn fighting him, but at the same time, he's not explicitly trying to turn fight me. He's just simply trying to get on the tail of the air defense plane, so killing him was not an issue. Now we have, what is that, Yak 9U, so he's also got a massive 45, but killing him once we get right on his tail, absolutely no issue whatsoever. We got a couple planes up high, and that's where this plane shines. Oh, it's a 109G, so hey, look at that. Little brother. Come here, little brother. I'll show you what you will soon be one day. When you do get hits, it just works really well, but you don't always get hits. This is one of the times where the gun is working really well. You can't get hits consistently all the time. I don't know. I'm done trying to explain it. You're seeing it for yourself, right? The 30 overheats really quickly. The 20s overheat fairly quickly. Not terribly quickly, but and when it does hit, you're doing a lot of damage to planes. But here I'm just trying to get the 30 to hit. I stopped firing with the 20, so I want to keep my 30 cool. Not quite able to get on him. There we go. We're on his tail, and he's gone. We get the ace medal already, which is nice. We still have a couple more minutes left on the battle. Squall line's not even here yet, so we can definitely pick up a pretty decent score this battle. He's gone, and it is squall line officially. So let's not get killed here. That would be good. LA7, oh look at that, 30 hit. So the range on the guns is super nice. I'll give it that. The range on the guns feels really good. And you'll see that getting planes that are trying to escape you is pretty decent in this plane with the gun layout that this plane has. And the factory just got it, so that's unfortunate. It is 100%. Otherwise, I would have gotten another kill. But hey, we'll take it. 21,555 points and mastery points when that was still a thing. A whole bunch of medals. You guys have seen those medals 100 times on this channel, so nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary. Let's quick jump to the post-battle results. And as you can see, this is during Albion event, so I'm pretty sure, when was this battle taken? The December 30th, 2017, so just to put that into perspective. 248,000 credits, not too bad. And yeah, that was with the premium account. Looks like I'd gotten a free day somehow. A little bit of tokens. 16,500 experience. And yeah, mostly what was for a times 5. It's a good plane, but it's not a good plane. It's a fun plane, but it's not a fun plane. It performs well, but it doesn't perform well. It's so contradictory. I don't get this plane, but hey, it is what it is. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like. Maybe give a comment down below. I love reading comments. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying the Pikmin series I've been doing. I know it's a little bit different from the usual content, but it's what I've been playing recently. It's what I enjoy. Um, it's part of who I was when I was a kid. So um, hopefully you guys still enjoy it. But if you don't, I'm sorry. Uh, I'll still do World of Warplanes content, but I don't want to do exclusively World of Warplanes content. No. So I'm not going to limit myself that way. I'd get too bored of it too quickly. But anyway, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and leave a comment below.